The letter trembled in Jamie's hands, its edges worn from days of clutching it like a lifeline. "You're no son of mine," his mother's words echoed, sharp as the autumn wind cutting through his thin jacket. He stood on the cracked sidewalk of his childhood street in suburban Ohio, staring at the house he'd once called home, now a fortress of rejection. At 28, Jamie had built a life in Columbus, a modest one, with a small apartment and a job as a graphic designer. He'd always been the quiet one, the dreamer who sketched in the margins of his notebooks, the son who memorized his mother's favorite songs to sing her on her birthday. But 2 years ago, when he came out as gay, his world fractured. His father hung up mid-call. His mother, Ellen, sent a single letter, "Don't come back. You're not welcome." His younger sister, Sarah, was the only one who stayed, her voice a soft anchor in the storm. Now, he was back in Willow Creek, driven by a stubborn flicker of hope. Ellen's 60th birthday was days away, and Jamie had spent weeks planning a surprise party, a gesture to mend what was broken. He'd called caterers, rented a tent, even designed invitations with her favorite lilies. Sarah had warned him Mom's heart hadn't softened, but Jamie believed love could still win. He was wrong. The door swung open before he could knock. Ellen stood there, her face a mask of cold fury. "I told you not to come," she snapped, her voice carrying the weight of years of unspoken disappointment. Behind her, the house smelled of her signature apple pie, a cruel reminder of the warmth he'd lost. "You think you can just show up? After what you chose?" "I didn't choose this, Mom," Jamie said, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. "I'm still your son." She laughed, a bitter sound that cut deeper than her words. "You're nothing to me. Get out before I call the police." The door slammed shut, leaving Jamie alone with the echo of her laughter. Sarah found him later, sitting on the curb, the letter crumpled in his fist. At 25, she was the family's peacemaker, her auburn hair tied back as she knelt beside him. "I told you she wouldn't listen," she said softly, her hand on his shoulder. "But I'm proud of you for trying." "I just wanted her to see me," Jamie whispered, "to remember who I am." Sarah's eyes glistened. "She's wrong, Jamie, and I'll help you prove it." Over the next few days, Jamie threw himself into the party plans, fueled by a mix of defiance and desperation. Sarah worked quietly beside him, securing a venue at the community center, convincing old family friends to attend despite Ellen's disapproval. They didn't know the full story. Ellen had told everyone Jamie had chosen a sinful life and cut ties willingly. The lie stung, but Jamie refused to let it stop him. He spent hours designing a slideshow of memories, Ellen teaching him to ride a bike, laughing at his terrible teenage poetry, pinning his art to the fridge. If she could see it, he thought, maybe she'd remember the love they'd shared. Maybe she'd see him again. The night before the party, Sarah called with news that nearly broke him. "Mom found out," she said, her voice tight. "She's telling everyone to boycott it." She laughed. Jamie said it was pathetic. Jamie's heart sank, but something else stirred a spark of resolve. "Then we'll throw the party anyway," he said. "For us. For the truth." The community center buzzed with nervous energy as Jamie and Sarah set up the next evening. Only a handful of guests arrived: Sarah's best friend, a few cousins, and Mr. Thompson, the old neighbor who'd always liked Jamie's sketches. The tent was half empty, the lilies wilting in the October chill. Jamie stood at the front, the slideshow ready, his hands shaking. He'd poured his heart into this, and now it felt like a failure. But then the door creaked open, and a stranger walked in, a man in his late 30s, with kind eyes and a hesitant smile. "I'm David," he said, extending a hand. Sarah told me about you. I know what it's like to be cast out. David's presence was a lifeline. As they talked, Jamie learned he was a local teacher, openly gay, who'd faced his own family's rejection. You're not alone, David said, his voice steady. And you're not invisible. The slideshow began, and Jamie's voice cracked as he narrated the memories. Each photo was a plea, a reminder of the boy Ellen had loved before she decided he was a stranger. The small crowd watched in silence, some wiping tears. Sarah squeezed his hand, her belief in him unshakable. As the last slide faded, Jamie felt a weight lift. Not because his mother was there, she wasn't, but because he'd reclaimed his story. He wasn't nothing. He was Jamie, the son who loved fiercely, even when it hurt. But the night wasn't over. Sarah's phone buzzed, and her face paled as she read the message. It's Mom, she whispered. She's coming. The community center's lights flickered as Jamie's heart raced. Ellen was coming. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy with the promise of confrontation. Sarah clutched her phone, her knuckles white, as she glanced at Jamie. She's furious, she said. She heard about the slideshow. Someone told her it's about her failure as a mother. Jamie's stomach twisted. He hadn't meant it that way, not exactly. The slideshow was about love. About the years they'd shared before his coming out shattered everything. But Ellen's anger was a force of nature, and he knew she'd see it as an attack. What do we do? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah squared her shoulders, her resolve cutting through the tension. We finish what we started. This is your truth, Jamie. She can't take that from you. David, standing nearby, nodded. You've got this, he said, his calm presence grounding Jamie. Whatever happens, you're not alone tonight. The guests sparse as they were since the shift in the air. Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses, murmuring to a cousin about Ellen's temper. Sarah's friend, Mia, busied herself arranging chairs, her loyalty to the siblings unspoken but clear. Jamie took a deep breath, his hands steadying as he prepared to face the woman who'd once been his world. The door slammed open, and Ellen stormed in, her face a mask of rage. At 60, she carried herself with the unyielding strength of a woman who'd survived lost her husband's death 5 years ago, her son's betrayal. As she saw it, her graying hair was pulled back tightly, and her eyes locked on Jamie like a predator's. You think you can humiliate me? She spat, parading your shame in front of everyone. The room fell silent. Jamie's throat tightened, but he stood tall. This isn't about shame, Mom. It's about us. About the family we were. Ellen's laugh was sharp, cutting. Family. You threw that away when you chose your lifestyle. The word dripped with disdain, and Jamie felt it like a slap. The guests shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. Not yet. Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm but trembling. He didn't choose to be who he is, Mom. He chose to be honest. And you're the one who threw him away. Ellen's eyes flashed, but before she could respond, David spoke up, his tone calm but unyielding. Mrs. Carter, I don't know you, but I know what it's like to lose family over who you love. Jamie's not here to hurt you. He's here because he still loves you. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Ellen faltered. Her gaze flickered to the screen, where a photo lingered. Jamie at 10, grinning as he held up a birthday card he'd drawn for her. The memory seemed to pierce her armor, but she quickly rebuilt it. Love, she scoffed. This is a stunt. You're trying to make me look like the villain. No, Jamie said, his voice breaking through the haze of her anger. I just wanted you to see me, to remember me. He gestured to the slideshow, now paused on a photo of them baking together, flour dusting their faces. I thought if you saw this, you'd miss me too. Ellen's lips tightened, but she didn't speak. The room waited, breathless. Then, Mr. Thompson stood, his voice gravelly but kind. Ellen, I've known you 30 years. You raised a good boy. Don't let pride steal that from you. The weight of his words settled over the room. Ellen's hands clenched, her eyes darting between Jamie and the screen. For the first time, Jamie saw something flicker in her expression, not forgiveness. Not yet, but doubt. A crack in the wall she'd built. Sarah seized the moment. Mom, stay? Watch the rest. Please. Ellen hesitated, her pride warring with something deeper. Finally, she sat, her posture rigid, her silence louder than any words. The slideshow resumed, and Jamie narrated, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. Each photo was a memory, a piece of the life they'd shared: picnics, holidays, quiet moments when love had been enough. The guests watched, some crying softly, others nodding as if remembering their own fractured families. As the final slide faded, Jamie turned to his mother. I don't want to fight you, he said. I just want you to know I'm still your son. And I'll always love you, even if you can't love me back. Ellen's face was unreadable, but her hands trembled in her lap. She stood abruptly, her voice low. I need time. Without another word, she walked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. Sarah hugged Jamie tightly, her tears soaking his shirt. You did it, she whispered. You showed her. David placed a hand on Jamie's shoulder. She heard you. That's a start. But Jamie wasn't sure. As the guests began to leave, offering quiet words of support, he felt both lighter and heavier. He'd poured his heart out, bared his soul, and still, his mother had walked away. Yet something had shifted her doubt, her trembling hands. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was something. That night, as Jamie lay in Sarah's guest room, he couldn't sleep. The party had been a risk, a gamble on love that hadn't fully paid off. But he'd spoken his truth, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt seen. Not by Ellen, not yet, but by Sarah, by David, by the handful of people who'd shown up. It was enough to keep going. The next morning, Sarah burst into the room, holding a letter. It's from Mom, she said, her voice a mix of hope and fear. She left it on the porch. Jamie's hands shook as he opened it, the familiar handwriting a painful reminder of the letter that had banished him. But this one was different. Jamie, it began. I watched the slideshow. I don't understand you, but I saw you. I'm not ready, but I'm thinking. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a crack in the wall. And for Jamie, that was enough to keep hoping. The letter lay on Sarah's kitchen table, its words burned into Jamie's mind. Ellen's handwriting, once a source of warmth in birthday cards and grocery lists, now carried a fragile thread of possibility. I'm thinking, she'd written, and those 2 words felt like a lifeline, thin but unbroken. Jamie spent the morning in a daze, replaying the party in his head. The slideshow, the guests' quiet tears, his mother's rigid silent side all swirled together, a mix of pain and hope. Sarah, ever the optimist, brewed coffee and sat across from him, her eyes bright with determination. She's never written back before, she said. This means something. Jamie. Maybe, he replied, tracing the edge of the letter. Or maybe she's just trying to shut me up. Sarah shook her head. You saw her last night. She was shaken. That's not nothing. David joined them later, bringing bagels from a local bakery. His presence was steadying, like a quiet anchor in the storm of Jamie's emotions. Over coffee, they talked about the party, about Ellen's reaction, about the small but loyal group who'd shown up. "You reach people," David said. "Not just your mom. Mr. Thompson was talking about you all night, saying he wished he'd stood up for his nephew years ago." Jamie managed a small smile. "I didn't expect that. I wanted her to see me." "She did," David said. "And she's still seeing you. That letter proves it." The day stretched on, and Jamie found himself restless. He wandered Willow Creek, passing the park where he'd played as a kid, the diner where Ellen used to take him for milkshakes. Every corner held a memory, and with it, a pang of loss. But there was something else now, a stubborn spark of defiance. He wasn't the boy who'd left 2 years ago, broken and ashamed. He was stronger, and he had people in his corner. Sarah suggested they visit the community center again, to clean up and thank the staff. When they arrived, they found Mia already there, stacking chairs with a determined frown. "I heard what happened," she said, hugging Jamie tightly. "Your mom's wrong, but she's not unreachable. I saw her face last night. She's fighting herself." Jamie nodded, unsure how to respond. Mia's words echoed Sarah's, but doubt still gnawed at him. What if Ellen's letter was a fluke? What if she never came around? As they cleaned, David pulled Jamie aside. "I want to show you something," he said, leading him to a small bulletin board in the center's lobby. Pinned to it was a flyer for a local LGBTQ support group, with David's name listed as a contact. "I started this after my family cut me off," he explained. "It's not big, but it's a place to belong. You should come to a meeting." Jamie hesitated. He'd never been to a group like that, always too afraid of being judged or pitted. But David's kindness, his quiet strength, made the idea feel less daunting. "Maybe I will," he said. That evening, Sarah got a call from their cousin, Lisa, who'd been at the party. "People are talking," Lisa said, her voice excited. "Mr. Thompson's been telling everyone how brave you were. Jamie. And Aunt Ellen, she didn't go to church today? That's a first." Jamie's heart skipped. Ellen's Sunday routine was sacred church, then lunch with her book club. If she'd skipped it, something was shifting. But whether it was toward reconciliation or deeper anger, he couldn't tell. The next day, Jamie and Sarah decided to take a risk. They drove to Ellen's house, not to confront her, but to leave a small gift, a framed photo from the slideshow of Jamie and Ellen laughing at a county fair. Sarah slipped it into the mailbox with a note. "We love you, Mom. Whenever you're ready." As they drove away, Jamie's phone buzzed. It was a text from David. "Coffee tomorrow. You don't have to go through this alone." Jamie smiled, a warmth spreading through him. For the first time, he felt like he was building something Nawa family of his own choosing. Days passed, and Ellen's silence stretched on. Jamie threw himself into work, sketching designs for a client while replaying her letter in his mind. "I'm thinking, what did that mean? Was she rethinking her beliefs? Or just her words?" The uncertainty was maddening. But Sarah and David kept him grounded, their support a constant reminder that he wasn't alone. Then, one evening, Sarah burst into Jamie's apartment, her face alight. "You won't believe this," she said, holding up her phone. It was a photo from Lisa's snapshot of Ellen at the community center, standing in front of the bulletin board. She was looking at David's flyer, her expression unreadable but focused. "She's curious," Sarah said, her voice trembling with hope. "She's actually thinking about it." Jamie's heart pounded. It wasn't a hug, a call, or an apology. But it was movement, a step toward something. And for now, that was enough. The photo of Ellen at the community center haunted Jamie. She'd stood there, staring at David's flyer, her face a mystery. Was it curiosity, anger, or something softer? He couldn't stop wondering, and the not knowing gnawed at him like a splinter under skin. Sarah, ever hopeful, saw it as progress. She's never gone near anything like that before, she said over breakfast, her voice bright with possibility. She's thinking about you. Jamie. Really thinking. Jamie wanted to believe her, but doubt was a heavy weight. He'd spent 2 years rebuilding himself after Ellen's rejection, piecing together a life from the shards of his old one. The idea of hoping again, of opening that wound, felt dangerous. Yet the image of his mother, standing alone in the community center, kept him awake at night. David's coffee invitation turned into a regular thing. They met at a small cafe in Columbus, a cozy spot with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasted beans. David was easy to talk to. His stories of teaching high school kids and navigating his own family's fallout grounding Jamie in a way he hadn't expected. My parents still don't speak to me, David admitted one afternoon, stirring his latte. But I found people who do. You will too. I think I already have, Jamie said, meeting his eyes. David's smile was warm, and for a moment, Jamie felt something a spark of connection. Fragile but real. Meanwhile, Sarah kept tabs on Ellen through Lisa and Mr. Thompson. Small updates trickled in. Ellen had skipped another Sunday service, a shock to her church friends. She'd been seen at the library, checking out a book on family dynamics. Each tidbit fueled Sarah's optimism, but Jamie remained cautious. She's not calling, he said. She's not reaching out. What if she's just curious, not changing? Then we keep showing her who you are, Sarah replied. We don't give up. Inspired by David's group, Jamie decided to attend a meeting. The community center's basement room was small, with folding chairs and a coffee pot in the corner. About a dozen people sat in a circle. Their ages and stories varied, but their warmth immediate. Jamie hesitated before speaking, but when he shared his story, Ellen's letter, the party, her trembling hands, the group listened without judgment. A woman named Clara, in her 50s, reached out after. My daughter hasn't spoken to me in years, she said. Keep going. Sometimes it takes time. The meeting left Jamie lighter, like he'd shed a layer of shame he hadn't realized he was carrying. He started attending weekly, finding solace in the stories of others who'd faced rejection and built new lives. David was always there, his presence a quiet comfort. One night, as they walked to their cars, David paused. You're stronger than you think, he said, and you're not invisible to me. Jamie's heart skipped, but before he could respond, his phone buzzed. It was Sarah, her voice urgent. Mom called me. She wants to talk. To both of us. The words hit like a shockwave. Jamie drove to Sarah's house, his mind racing. Was this it? Was Ellen ready to listen? Or was this another wall going up? When they arrived at Ellen's house the next day, she was waiting in the living room, her hands folded tightly. The photo they'd left in her mailbox sat on the coffee table, its frame glinting in the light. I saw your slideshow, Ellen said, her voice low. And that group at the center. I don't understand it. Jamie, I don't understand you. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, they weren't cold, just confused. But I don't want to lose you. Jamie's breath caught. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was a start. I don't want to lose you either, he said. Can we try? Ellen nodded. A small, hesitant movement. I need time, she said again. But this time, It felt different, like a door cracking open. As they left, Sarah squeezed his hand. "See, she's coming around." Jamie wasn't sure. Time was a fragile promise, and Ellen's walls were still high. But as he drove back to Columbus, David's words echoed in his mind, "You're not invisible." And for the first time, Jamie believed it. Ellen's words lingered in Jamie's mind like a half-finished song. "I don't want to lose you." It was the closest she'd come to reconciliation. But it wasn't an embrace. Not yet. Jamie clung to it, though, as he navigated the weeks that followed, balancing hope with the fear that she'd retreat again. Sarah was relentless, planning small ways to keep the connection alive. She invited Ellen to dinner at her place, neutral ground where Jamie could join without the weight of their old home. Ellen agreed, but her presence was cautious, her words measured. She asked about Jamie's job, his life in Columbus, but skirted anything deeper. Still, she listened when he spoke, her eyes lingering on him longer than before. David became a constant in Jamie's life, their coffee dates evolving into something more. One evening, as they walked through a park, David took Jamie's hand. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental, like a claim to a happiness Jamie had long denied himself. "I'm glad you're here," David said, his voice soft. Jamie's heart raced, but he didn't pull away. The support group meetings continued to anchor Jamie. He grew close to Clara, who shared stories of her daughter's slow return to her life. "It's not perfect," Clara said, "but every step counts." Her words gave Jamie patience, a reminder that Ellen's journey might be slow but wasn't impossible. Meanwhile, Sarah uncovered a secret Ellen had kept. Through Lisa, she learned Ellen had been attending a church support group, not her usual one, but a quieter one focused on families of LGBTQ people. "She's trying to understand," Sarah said, her voice alight with hope. "She's doing it in her own way." Jamie wasn't sure what to feel. Part of him wanted to run to Ellen, to beg her to see him fully. But another part, the part strengthened by David and the group, knew he deserved more than crumbs of acceptance. He deserved love, unapologetic and whole. One night, Ellen called Jamie directly at first. Her voice was shaky, uncertain. "I went to that group," she said. "I heard stories. People like you. I didn't know." She paused, and Jamie held his breath. "I'm sorry I laughed at your party. I was scared." The apology was small, but it cracked something open in Jamie. "I'm scared too," he admitted, "but I'm still here." They agreed to meet again, this time at the community center. Ellen wanted to see the space where Jamie had found refuge. When they arrived, David was there, setting up for a meeting. He greeted Ellen warmly, no trace of judgment in his eyes. "Thank you for coming," he said. "It means a lot to Jamie." Ellen nodded, her gaze flickering to the bulletin board where David's flyer still hung. She didn't speak much, but she stayed for the meeting, sitting quietly as others shared their stories. Jamie watched her, his heart a tangle of hope and fear. When Clara spoke about her daughter, Ellen's eyes glistened, and Jamie knew she was listening not just to Clara, but to him. After the meeting, Ellen pulled Jamie aside. "I don't know if I'll ever fully understand," she said, her voice raw, "but I want to try. For you." It wasn't a promise of everything, but it was enough. As Jamie hugged her, tentative but real, he felt the weight of 2 years begin to lift. Sarah, watching from across the room, wiped away tears. David smiled, his presence a quiet reminder that Jamie had built a family beyond blood. That night, Jamie lay awake, thinking of the road ahead. Ellen's journey wasn't over, and neither was his. But for the first time, he felt like they were walking toward each other, not away. The hug lingered in Jamie's memory, a fragile bridge between him and Ellen. It wasn't the warm, enveloping embrace of his childhood, but it was real, her arms around him, hesitant but present. For the first time in years, Jamie felt a flicker of the mother he'd lost, and it both warmed and terrified him. Sarah threw herself into nurturing this fragile connection. She organized family dinners, small gatherings where Ellen and Jamie could talk without the weight of the past crushing them. At one dinner, Ellen brought up a memory unprompted: Jamie's high school art show. How proud she'd been when he won first place. "I still have that painting," she said, her voice soft. Jamie's heart ached with hope, but he guarded it, knowing how quickly she could pull back. David's presence in Jamie's life grew stronger. They spent evenings cooking together, laughing over burnt pasta and sharing stories of their pasts. David's quiet strength steadied Jamie, especially on days when Ellen's progress faltered. One night, as they sat on Jamie's couch, David kissed him, a gentle, certain kiss that felt like a promise. "I'm all in," David said, his eyes steady. Jamie nodded, his fears quieted by the warmth of David's hand in his. The support group remained Jamie's sanctuary. He shared updates about Ellen, and the group celebrated his small victories. Clara, especially, became a mentor, her own story of reconciliation with her daughter a roadmap for Jamie. "It's not linear," she warned. "There'll be setbacks, but you're both trying." Setbacks came, as Clara predicted. At one dinner, Ellen bristled when Jamie mentioned David, her old discomfort flaring. "I'm trying," she said sharply, "but it's hard." Jamie's heart sank, but he didn't push. Instead, he leaned on Sarah and David, who reminded him that progress wasn't a straight line. Then came a breakthrough. Ellen invited Jamie to her house, not for a confrontation, but for coffee. The gesture was small, but it felt monumental. As they sat in her kitchen, the photo from the county fair on the table, Ellen spoke haltingly. "I've been reading," she said. "Books from that church group. They talk about love, about acceptance. I didn't know how much I hurt you." Jamie's throat tightened. "I just wanted you to see me," he said. "Not as a sin, but as your son." Ellen's eyes filled with tears. "I'm starting to," she whispered. "I'm sorry it's taken so long." The words were a balm, soothing wounds Jamie had carried for years. They talked for hours, about his life, his art, even David. Ellen didn't fully understand, but she listened, and that was enough. Sarah, when she heard, was ecstatic. "This is it, Jamie," she said, hugging him tightly. "She's coming back to you." But Jamie knew it wasn't over. Ellen's journey was slow, her beliefs still tangled with years of conditioning. Yet each step, each conversation, each tear felt like a brick in a new foundation. David, too, saw the change. "She's trying," he said one night, as they walked hand in hand. "And so are you. That's what matters." As winter approached, Jamie felt a shift within himself. He was no longer the boy begging for his mother's love. He was a man, loved by David, supported by Sarah, and strengthened by a community that saw him fully. Ellen's acceptance, when it came, would be a gift, but it wasn't his only source of worth. One evening, Ellen called again. "I want you to come to Christmas," she said, her voice steady. "And bring David, if you want." Jamie's heart soared. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning, a real one. Christmas loomed like a test, a chance to see if Ellen's tentative steps toward acceptance would hold. Jamie felt a mix of excitement and dread as he and David prepared to visit Willow Creek. Sarah had spent weeks planning the day, determined to make it a bridge between past and present. "It's going to be okay," she said, though her eyes betrayed her own nerves. Ellen's house was unchanged, still smelling of apple pie and pine from the Christmas tree. Jamie's heart clenched as he stepped inside, David's hand brushing his for reassurance. Ellen greeted them stiffly, her smile tight but present. "Welcome," she said, her eyes flickering to David. It wasn't warmth, but it wasn't rejection either. The day unfolded slowly. Sarah filled the silences with chatter, recounting old holiday memories to ease the tension. Ellen listened, even laughed once when Jamie recalled the time he'd tangled himself in Christmas lights as a kid. David, ever calm, shared stories of his students, carefully steering clear of anything too personal. Jamie watched his mother, searching for signs of the woman who'd laughed at his party. But she was different now, quieter, more reflective. After dinner, Ellen pulled Jamie aside. "I've been talking to Pastor Ann," she said, referencing the leader of the church support group. "She says love is the point, not rules." "Not what I thought." Her hands twisted together, a nervous habit Jamie recognized from childhood. "I've been wrong, Jamie. About a lot." The words hit like a wave, washing away years of pain. Jamie's eyes stung, but he held her gaze. "I just want us to be a family again," he said. Ellen nodded, tears spilling over. "I'm trying. I promise." David joined them later, and Ellen surprised Jamie by asking him about his life, not just his job, but his hopes, his dreams. It was awkward, halting, but real. As they left, Ellen hugged Jamie. Then, hesitantly, "David, come back soon," she said, her voice thick. On the drive back to Columbus, Jamie felt lighter than he had in years. David reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining. "You did that," David said. "You kept showing up." Sarah called the next day, her voice brimming with excitement. "Mom's been talking about you nonstop. She's even planning to visit your apartment." The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Jamie's life in Columbus's art. His relationship with David was his own, built without Ellen's approval. Letting her in meant risking her judgment again. But he was ready, or at least ready to try. Over the next few weeks, Ellen kept her promise. She called regularly, asking about Jamie's work, even David's teaching. She visited the support group again, this time asking questions. Jamie, meanwhile, leaned on his own support. David, Sarah, Clara, and the group. They reminded him that his worth didn't hinge on Ellen's acceptance, even as he hoped for it. One day, Ellen sent a Packagia sketchbook, filled with drawings Jamie had made as a child. Tucked inside was a note. "I kept these. They're still beautiful. Like you." Jamie cried as he read it, David's arms around him. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a foundation, one they could build on together. Spring arrived, and with it, a new rhythm in Jamie's life. Ellen's calls became a weekly ritual, her voice warmer each time. She visited Columbus, stepping into Jamie's apartment with a mix of awe and hesitation. She admired his sketches, asked about David's teaching, even laughed when Jamie teased her about her terrible cooking. It wasn't perfect, there were still moments of tension. Questions she didn't know how to ask, but it was progress, real and steady. David and Jamie grew closer, their relationship a quiet anchor. They spent weekends exploring Columbus, dreaming about a future together. Sarah, ever the cheerleader, planned family gatherings, each one easier than the last. Ellen began to share her own stories, her fears, her regrets. "I was raised to believe certain things," she admitted one night. "Letting go of that, it's hard. But you're worth it." The support group remained Jamie's refuge, a place to process the highs and lows. Clara's daughter had started calling again, and her joy gave Jamie hope. "You and your mom," Clara said. "You're proof it's possible." The truth came out slowly, not in a single moment, but in 1,000 small ones. Ellen's apologies, her questions, her presence. The town began to see it too. Mr. Thompson told neighbors about Jamie's courage, and Lisa spread word of Ellen's change of heart. The party, once a source of pain, became a story of redemption, whispered in Willow Creek's diners and churches. One evening, Ellen invited Jamie, David, and Sarah to a barbecue in her backyard. It was the same yard where Jamie had stood, rejected, 2 years ago. Now, it was filled with laughter. Sarah's, David's, even Ellen's. As the sun set, Ellen raised a glass. "To family," she said, her eyes on Jamie. "To starting over." Jamie clinked his glass against hers, his heart full. He looked at David, at Sarah, at the woman who'd once turned him away but now stood beside him. The pain of rejection would always linger, a scar that told his story. But so would the love, the fierce, stubborn love that had brought them back together. As they ate, Ellen pulled Jamie aside. "I'm proud of you," she said, her voice steady. "And I'm sorry it took me so long to say it." Jamie hugged her, tears falling freely. "You're here now?" he said. "That's enough." The truth had come out not in a dramatic reveal, but in the quiet, messy work of rebuilding. Jamie had planned a party to reach his mother, and though she'd laughed and banned him, love had won in the end. Not just Ellen's, but Sarah's, David's, and his own. He was seen, he was loved, and he was home.